Welcome back to Easy English Talk podcast.
Have you ever noticed that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is absolutely nothing at all? Welcome to Easy English Talk podcast. I'm Ryan. Today, we are discussing why silence can be more powerful than words.
And I'm Priya. It's great to have you with us. You know, silence is something we experience every day, but we rarely think about its power. Most of us are actually a bit afraid of silence, aren't we?
That's so true. We fill every gap with words, even when we have nothing important to say. We panic when a conversation goes quiet, like something is wrong. But silence is not emptiness. It's actually full of meaning.
Exactly. Silence can speak louder than 100 words. It can show respect, create tension, or even change someone's mind. But we've been taught to fear it instead of use it.
So let's start with the problem. Why do people struggle so much with silence? Why do we feel this constant need to fill every moment with sound? What makes silence so uncomfortable for most of us?
I think it comes from how we're raised. From childhood, we're told to speak up. Teachers reward students who talk. Workplaces value people who share ideas constantly. Silence is seen as awkward, rude, or even a sign of weakness.
Right, and in social situations, silence feels like failure. If there's a pause in conversation, we think we're boring or that something went wrong. So we rush to fill the gap with anything, even meaningless words.
And that's the problem. We talk just to talk, not because we have something valuable to say. We lose the power of our words because we use too many of them. Silence becomes this enemy we're constantly fighting against.
There's also the fear of being misunderstood, isn't there? People worry that if they stay quiet, others will think they're angry or uninterested. So they over-explain everything just to avoid that silence.
Absolutely. We assume silence means something negative, but in reality, silence can mean 1,000 different things depending on the context. It's our own anxiety that makes us interpret it badly.
So we've created this culture where talking is always seen as better than listening, where being loud is mistaken for being confident, and where silence is treated like a problem that needs to be solved immediately.
Yes, and this causes real issues in communication. People don't listen properly because they're too busy thinking of what to say next. Conversations become shallow because no one pauses to reflect.
Exactly. We miss the deeper meaning in what others say because we can't sit with silence. We interrupt, we rush, we dominate conversations. And in the end, we understand each other less, not more.
So that's the core problem. We've forgotten how to be comfortable with silence. We see it as something to avoid rather than something to embrace. The truth is, silence has incredible power when we learn to use it.
So let's talk about that power. Let's explore why silence can be stronger than words. What makes it so effective in different situations? Let's start with one of the most important uses, listening.
Yes, listening. Real listening requires silence. When you stay quiet, you give the other person space to express themselves fully. You're not just waiting for your turn to talk, you're actually absorbing what they say.
And people can feel the difference. They know when someone is truly listening. It builds trust. It makes them feel valued and understood. Silence shows respect in a way that words often can't.
Think about a time when you shared something personal with someone. The best response wasn't advice or comments. It was just someone being there, silent but present. That silence said, I hear you. I'm with you.
Right. Sometimes people don't need solutions, they need to be heard. And silence gives them that space without judgment or interruption. It's a gift, really. A rare one in our noisy world.
Another powerful use of silence is in conflict or difficult conversations. When someone says something hurtful or tries to provoke you, silence can be your shield. Responding immediately often makes things worse.
Absolutely. When you pause instead of reacting, you take control of the situation. You don't give them the emotional reaction they might be looking for. And you give yourself time to think about what's really worth saying.
It's interesting, isn't it? In arguments, the person who stays calm and quiet often wins. Not because they dominate with words, but because they don't feed the fire. Silence can diffuse tension better than any explanation.
I remember a situation at work once. A colleague criticized my project harshly in a meeting. My first instinct was to defend myself immediately with all kinds of explanations, but I stayed quiet for a few seconds, just looking at them calmly.
And what happened? I'm guessing the silence changed the energy in the room. Did it make them rethink what they said?
Exactly. The silence made everyone uncomfortable, including them. They actually softened their tone and started asking questions instead of attacking. I responded calmly after that, and the whole conversation became productive.
That's a perfect example. Silence shifted the power dynamic. It forced everyone to pause and think instead of just reacting emotionally. That's something words alone couldn't have achieved.
Now let's talk about silence in leadership and influence. Leaders who use silence wisely often command more respect than those who talk constantly. Why do you think that is?
Because silence creates authority. When a leader speaks less, their words carry more weight. People listen more carefully because they know it's going to be meaningful. Constant talking dilutes your message. Silence sharpens it.
Right. Think about someone who talks all the time versus someone who speaks only when necessary. Who do you trust more? Who seems more thoughtful? Usually, it's the one who knows when to be quiet.
And in meetings or group discussions, silence can be a strategic tool. When you ask a question and then stay silent, you put the responsibility on others to respond. It encourages deeper thinking instead of quick, shallow answers.
I've seen managers use this technique. They ask a tough question and just wait. At first, it's uncomfortable. No one wants to speak. But eventually, someone shares a real, thoughtful answer that wouldn't have come out otherwise.
Exactly. That silence creates pressure in a productive way. It makes people engage more seriously instead of just filling time with words. It's a simple technique, but incredibly effective.
Silence also plays a huge role in negotiation, doesn't it? In business or any situation where you're trying to reach an agreement, the person who speaks first after an offer is usually at a disadvantage.
Yes, this is a classic negotiation tactic. Make your offer, then stay silent. Let the other person process it. Let them feel the weight of the moment. If you start talking again, you might give away too much or show nervousness.
I remember reading about a salesperson who would name their price and then literally count to 10 in their head. They never spoke again until the customer responded, and they closed far more deals than their colleagues who kept talking.
Because silence creates tension. Not bad tension, but anticipation. The customer had to make a decision without being influenced by more sales talk. It put the power in their hands, which ironically made them more likely to say yes.
Interesting, right? Silence can actually make people more comfortable deciding. Too many words can feel pushy or manipulative. Silence feels honest. It feels like respect for their choice.
Now let's look at silence in relationships, romantic ones, friendships, family. This is where silence can be most powerful, but also most misunderstood. How do you see silence playing a role there?
In relationships, silence can mean comfort. When you're truly close to someone, you don't need constant conversation. You can sit together quietly and feel completely at ease. That kind of silence shows deep connection.
Yes, comfortable silence is a sign of a strong relationship. You're not performing for each other, you're just being. Many couples say that's when they feel most connected, in those quiet moments.
But silence can also be a problem if it's used to avoid difficult conversations. Some people shut down and refuse to talk when there's conflict. That kind of silence isn't powerful, it's just avoidance.
Right. There's a difference between thoughtful silence and shutting someone out. One is a tool for better communication. The other is a wall. In relationships, you need to know which one you're using.
So, the key is intention. Are you being silent to listen, to think, to respect? Or are you being silent to punish, to avoid, to control? The same behavior can have completely opposite meanings.
Absolutely. And that's why understanding silence is so important. It's not about never talking or always staying quiet. It's about choosing silence with purpose when it serves you better than words.
Let's talk about silence and self-control. This is something I find fascinating. When you can stay silent in moments of anger or frustration, you show incredible strength. It's much harder than it sounds, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. Our natural instinct is to react immediately when we're upset. We want to defend ourselves, correct the other person, prove we're right. But that immediate reaction rarely leads to good outcomes.
I think about this phrase, Speak when you are angry and you will make the best speech you will ever regret. It's so true. Words said in anger stick with people, but silence gives you time to cool down and respond wisely instead.
And silence doesn't mean weakness in those moments. It means discipline. It takes real power to hold back when every part of you wants to explode. That's control. That's maturity.
So silence becomes a form of self-protection too. You're protecting yourself from saying things you don't mean, and you're protecting the relationship from unnecessary damage.
Exactly. Think about arguments that spiral out of control. They usually happen because both people keep talking, keep reacting. If just one person paused and stayed silent, everything would change.
Now, let's shift to another important aspect, silence and creativity. Have you noticed that our best ideas often come in quiet moments when we're not bombarded with noise and distractions?
Yes, creativity needs space. It needs silence to breathe. When your mind is constantly processing words, sounds, and information, there's no room for new ideas. Silence clears that space and lets your imagination work.
Many great thinkers, artists, and innovators talk about the importance of solitude and quiet. They take walks alone, sit in silence, disconnect from everything. That's when breakthroughs happen.
Because silence lets you hear your own thoughts. In our daily lives, we're so used to external input that we forget to listen to ourselves. We don't know what we really think or feel because we never stop to check.
So, silence becomes a tool for self-discovery too. When you sit quietly without distractions, you start to understand yourself better. You notice patterns in your thinking. You realize what truly matters to you.
That's something I think everyone should practice. Just 5 or 10 minutes of silence each day. No phone, no music, no conversation. Just you and your thoughts. It sounds simple, but it's incredibly powerful.
And it's not meditation necessarily. You don't have to follow any specific technique. Just sit and be silent. Let your mind wander. You'll be surprised what comes up.
Now let's talk about silence in communication as a teaching tool. Teachers who use silence effectively help their students learn better. How does that work exactly?
Great question. When a teacher asks a question, most wait only a second or two for an answer. If no one responds, they either answer it themselves or move on quickly. But that doesn't give students time to think deeply.
Right. When you extend that silence to maybe 10 or 15 seconds, something changes. Students actually process the question. They start forming real answers. The silence feels uncomfortable at first, but it pushes them to engage.
And it shows respect for their thinking process. You're not rushing them or treating their ideas as less important. You're giving them the space to contribute meaningfully.
This applies beyond classrooms too. In any situation where you're helping someone learn or grow, whether you're a manager training an employee or a parent teaching a child, silence gives them room to think for themselves instead of just receiving information.
It builds confidence too. When someone works through a problem in silence and finds the answer themselves, that's much more powerful than being told the answer immediately. They own that knowledge in a deeper way.
So silence becomes a gift you give to others, the gift of space and time. In our fast-paced world, that's incredibly rare and valuable. Most people will remember the person who truly listened to them in silence.
Now I want to touch on something interesting: silence and body language. When we're silent, our nonverbal communication becomes even more important. How we hold ourselves during silence sends strong messages.
Absolutely. Silent but maintaining eye contact shows confidence and presence. Silent while looking away might show discomfort or disinterest. The same silence can mean completely different things based on your body language.
So if you want to use silence powerfully, you need to be aware of your physical presence. Stand or sit with calm confidence. Keep your expression neutral or warm. Don't fidget or show nervousness. Just be still and present.
That stillness itself is powerful. We're so used to constant movement and activity. When someone is completely still and silent, they command attention. It's almost magnetic in a way.
I think about how actors use silence and stillness on stage. The audience leans in. They pay closer attention because they know something important is happening in that quiet moment.
Exactly. Silence creates anticipation. It makes what comes next more meaningful. So when you do speak after a pause, your words land with more impact. People are ready to listen because the silence prepared them.
Let's talk about some practical ways people can start using silence more effectively. What's a simple first step someone could take today? How do you begin changing this habit of constant talking?
Start with listening practice. Next time someone talks to you, really listen. Don't think about your response. Don't interrupt. Just listen completely. Let there be a small pause after they finish before you respond.
That pause does two things. It shows you actually heard them, and it gives you a moment to think about what they really said. Your response will be better because of it.
Another practice is to count to 3 before responding to difficult questions. It feels long, but it's only 3 seconds. It breaks that habit of reacting instantly, and it makes you seem more thoughtful and composed.
What about in group settings? How can someone use silence there? That's often where people feel most pressure to contribute constantly. It takes courage to stay quiet when everyone else is talking.
One technique is to let others speak first. Don't rush to be the first voice heard. Wait and listen to what's being said. Then contribute something that adds to the discussion. Your contribution will be more valuable because it's informed by what came before.
And if you're leading a meeting, try asking a question and then being completely silent. Don't rescue people from the discomfort. Let them think. The quality of responses will improve dramatically.
You can also practice silence in your daily routine. Instead of turning on music or a podcast immediately, try silence during your commute or morning routine. Notice how it feels. Notice what thoughts come up.
Even just turning off notifications for an hour can help. You create pockets of silence in your day where you're not constantly reacting to beeps and buzzes. That gives your mind space to rest and reset.
And in conversations with friends or family, try this. When someone shares something important, don't immediately share your own story. Just acknowledge what they said. Ask a follow-up question, or just say, "Tell me more." Let the conversation stay with them instead of shifting to you.
That's such a good point. We often think we're connecting by sharing similar experiences, but sometimes the best connection happens when we just hold space for someone else. Silence can be that space.
Now let's address a common concern. Some people worry that using silence will make them seem unfriendly or distant. How do you balance being silent with being warm and approachable? Is there a way to use silence without pushing people away?
Great question. The key is intention and presence. Silence with a warm expression and engaged body language feels completely different from silence with a cold, closed-off demeanor. You can be quiet and still radiate warmth.
Right. Smile gently. Nod to show you're following. Maintain comfortable eye contact. These things communicate, "I'm with you," even without words. It's not the absence of words, it's the presence of attention.
And you don't have to be silent all the time. Use it strategically. Speak when you have something meaningful to add. Be quiet when listening serves better. It's about finding the right balance for each situation.
Also, explain your approach to close friends or colleagues if needed. Tell them you're working on being a better listener, on thinking before speaking. Most people will appreciate that. It helps them understand your silence isn't rejection.
Now let's talk about silence in the digital world. With texts, emails, social media, how does silence work there? Is it different from face-to-face silence? What do you think about not responding immediately to messages?
Digital silence is complicated because we've created this expectation of instant response. If someone doesn't reply within minutes, we assume something is wrong. But that expectation is actually harmful to us.
Absolutely. We're always on, always available, always expected to respond. But taking time before responding to a message is actually healthy. It gives you space to think about what you really want to say.
And it sets boundaries. You're showing that you have a life beyond your phone, that you're not just waiting around to respond to messages all day. Silence in digital communication can be very powerful that way.
Some people even practice a no immediate response rule. Unless it's urgent, they wait at least an hour before replying. This breaks the cycle of constant back and forth and makes each message more thoughtful.
That's smart because when we reply instantly, we often say things we haven't thought through. We get caught up in the emotion of the moment. A little silence gives us perspective.
And in professional settings, not responding immediately can actually increase your perceived value. If you're too available, too quick to respond, people might take you for granted. Strategic silence shows you're busy, you're important, your time matters.
But of course, there's a balance. You can't ignore important messages forever. The idea is to be intentional about when and how you respond, not to use silence as manipulation or game playing.
Right. It's about respect for yourself and others, respecting your own time and mental space by not being constantly reactive, and respecting others by giving them thoughtful responses rather than rushed ones.
Let's talk about one more aspect, silence and confidence. There's a strong connection between the two, isn't there? Confident people seem more comfortable with silence than insecure people.
Yes, definitely. Insecurity often shows up as overtalking. People feel silence because they're nervous, because they want to prove themselves. They think more words equal more value.
But truly confident people understand that they don't need to prove anything. They're comfortable letting moments pass without their input. They know their worth isn't measured by how much they talk.
And here's something interesting. Using silence actually builds confidence. When you practice staying quiet in situations where you'd normally talk, you realize nothing bad happens. The world doesn't end, people don't reject you. In fact, they often respect you more.
So it becomes this positive cycle. Silence builds confidence, which makes you more comfortable with silence. And that confidence shows in everything you do. The way you carry yourself, the way you communicate, the way you handle challenges.
I think silence also helps you trust yourself more. When you take time to think before speaking, when you listen to your own inner voice, you start to trust your judgment instead of seeking constant validation from others.
That's powerful. So many people struggle with self-trust. They're always looking outside themselves for answers, for approval. Silence turns your attention inward and helps you reconnect with your own wisdom.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to mention one important thing. Silence isn't always the answer. Sometimes speaking up is exactly what's needed. How do you know when to be silent and when to speak?
That's the crucial question. And I think it comes down to asking yourself, why do I want to speak right now? If it's to defend your ego, to prove you're smart, to fill awkwardness, maybe stay silent. If it's to share genuine insight, to stand up for someone, to express true feelings, speak.
So it's about checking your motivation. Are you speaking to add value or just to be heard? Is this about connection and truth or about your own discomfort? Honest self-reflection helps you make that choice.
And sometimes you won't know until you try. You'll make mistakes. You'll stay silent when you should have spoken. You'll speak when silence would have been better. That's part of learning. What matters is that you're being intentional about it.
Right. The goal isn't to become a silent person who never talks. It's to become someone who uses both silence and words with wisdom. Someone who understands the power of each and chooses accordingly.
And that takes practice. Like any skill, it gets easier over time. You develop a sense for when silence serves you and when words do. Be patient with yourself as you learn.
So, let's bring this all together. We've talked about so many ways silence can be powerful. In listening, in conflict, in leadership, in relationships, in self-control, in creativity. What's the main takeaway you hope people remember from this discussion?
I think the main message is this. Silence is not empty. It's full of possibility. It's a tool you can use consciously to improve your communication and your life. Don't fear it. Learn to embrace it and use it wisely.
And remember that in our noisy world, silence is actually a form of strength. It takes courage to be quiet when everyone else is talking, but that courage can transform how you connect with others and with yourself.
Start small. Practice in safe situations. Notice how it feels. Over time, you'll discover that silence truly can be more powerful than words, and that discovery will change the way you move through the world.
So, we want to thank you for listening to this episode of Easy English Talk Podcast. We hope this discussion gave you some new perspectives on the power of silence and maybe inspired you to experiment with using it more in your own life.
If you enjoyed this topic, we have many other interesting discussions waiting for you. Topics about communication, personal growth, relationships, and everyday life challenges. Thank you so much for spending this time with us today.
Remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply listen to others and to yourself. Take care, everyone. Until next time.